right, coming to you live from Columbia University. This is the Defying All Odds podcast.
Yes,
I got
sir.
my co-host Rafael
And yourself?
and myself, Jesse. So,
This is our first episode, our pilot, if you will. Okay. So let's get started. Introduce yourself.
all right. So my name is Jesse DeJesus. I go to Columbia University, rising senior here, majoring in biology, graduating May of 25. Uh, Originally born and raised here in New York City, specifically the Upper East Side of Manhattan. Recently just moved to Monroe, New York, so in the upstate area. But just glad to be here. And this past summer, I've been staying in Pittsburgh, working at a BNY as a U.S. payment investigations intern.
Okay, cool. Okay, well, my name is Rafael Cedeño. Born and raised here in New York City, Washington Heights. I already have a bachelor's in economics. And I went to City College of New York, here in New York. And as well, just looking for new opportunities and taking them as they come. So let's start with you, my guy. With this podcast, what are you in general? What are your hopes in getting from this podcast?
Well, one of the main reasons I had a foundation that I wanted to create with this podcast was I wanted to highlight the everyday stories of everyday people, whether that's here at Columbia or outside of Columbia, and just prove that we all have adversity. We all kind of go through tough moments in our lives, and it's about not what we've been through, but how we succeeded and how we overcame what we went through. That I really want to highlight. What are ways that we can basically defeat these moments of when we're feeling down or when we're at our worst. That's what I really wanted to highlight in this podcast. So today, this is our very first episode, meant to be an introduction to kind of what's to come. I'm
All
looking
right.
forward to it.
Okay. So you're saying you want to let this be kind of like a beacon of hope, if you will,
Absolutely.
kind of podcast. So okay, I assume you got a lot of people lined up for this cast, right?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of
And
outreach recently.
okay, cool. And what kind of things do you, or more specifically, what are certain things you are going to be talking about? What kind of things you want to talk about in
Any
general?
any specific adversity that someone's really faced, whether that's been at their worst moments in life where they feel like they've exhausted all options, that they have the world turned against them, and it's how they overcame that adversity or that challenge that they basically went through. The goal is to basically highlight that certain ways that we're able to get over these adversities in life. Um, I know we have a lot of student athletes here at Columbia. Be speaking a few of them as well in the near future, and then even outside of Columbia, a few other members of the community. A good friend of mine from back home will be talking about his experience actually in the New York City correction system. So a lot of crazy stuff to come for sure. But I think the most important thing is here is to kind of really focus and emphasize um, that we all come from different backgrounds, but that it's not about where we come from or kind of how we've gotten down, but how we got up. So
That's 100% true. I
yeah,
mean, at the end of the day, it's all about how you get from point A to point B. Obviously, we want to get from point A to point B, but it's about what you did in between that really defines what you are and who you are. How can
that's
you
right.
define all the odds
There
and
we go.
figure it out?
The Defying All Odds podcast. There you go, people.
Yeah, shameless plug, I guess. But yeah, that's what's all about. So, and you mentioned about how these people that you want to bring are from different backgrounds. To get a little bit about you, give me your background. I know you said you again from
Yeah, of
Columbia
course.
University, so try to just tell me in general, like what was your childhood like? I guess.
So I was born and raised in the Upper East Side. Um, was a,
What, New York?
yeah, here in
Okay.
Manhattan, in New York City. Born in like a walk-up building, belonged to the New York Presbyterian Hospital, so it was hospital housing, and it was a really old walk-up. I was the only child in the building, growing up, so I was always used to like speaking to older figures in the household in my building, and I always lived within a 5 block radius from all the schools I went to. My pre-K went to Lenox Hill preschool, went to PS 183 for elementary, went to Wagner Middle School for middle school, and I went
You
to
went to Wagner?
yeah, I went to Wagner
Okay.
Wagner Middle School 167. Um, and then I
Okay.
went to Eleanor Roosevelt High School for high school. And I've always lived in that community. Recently just moved out last month, so
Where'd you
bit
move out to now?
to Monroe, New York, so upstate area, 845.
You ain't a city boy no more.
No, it's
You ain't.
technically yeah, man. I think so I'd grown at Columbia, but yeah, so I mean, growing up, like one of the main things was just kind of experiencing the different levels of, I guess, difficulty. Like when you're maneuvering in like such a tight knit community, there weren't many people of like our background. So we're both Dominican. So
Dominicano.
yeah, so my mom's side's Dominican, my dad's side's Puerto Rican, and there's not a lot of us in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
So it's pretty easy to feel like a misfit pretty easily,
Yeah.
and kind of growing up through that, and standing out when you have so much spotlight on you, especially in that area, it can be a challenge sometimes. Not to say I haven't been privileged. I mean, I've been privileged in many areas, and I acknowledge that. Growing up in that area and the people I've met and the people I've been with, but I also give thanks to kind of my parents. I mean, my mom was she was an immigrant from the Dominican Republic. She studied medicine abroad in DR, came here, and she got married with my dad. And basically, kind of like seeing her create so much sacrifice and going through so much when she got here, bringing her mom over here, which was my grandma. I grew up with my mom, my dad, my grandma. So I was always the four of us. And I lost my grandma in 2018, March 5th, 2018.
Oh wow.
And I always, I still, I wouldn't say like I 100% got over it. I know like sometimes it always lingers on my mind. She was very close to me. So
Mhm.
it's like a second mom to you, right?
Yeah.
When you're with her for so long, 14 years and 9 months. But I would say growing up with them has definitely like also embodied the character who I am.
No,
And
totally, definitely.
yeah,
Your the environment that you're put in definitely. I definitely believe it sculpts the person that you end up becoming
absolutely.
wholeheartedly. So, and you said again your family, right? So, family definitely important for
Family's
you.
number one,
Yeah,
always.
I completely
Family
agree.
comes first.
Completely agree.
But yeah, so like my dad, he recently just retired. Worked many years in New York Presbyterian Hospital. Worked as a clerk/technician in the radiology department. So
Okay.
he was always very connected with all these top doctors at Weill Cornell, and
Cornell, you said?
yeah, Weill Cornell Medical. And so, being able to kind of have both parents come in healthcare. My mom worked in cancer research for the med school for Weill Cornell for many years. She left in 08, 09. My dad was working radiology and just left this year. Like being surrounded by that, I wouldn't say that was my main motivator. It was the fact what happened inside the household. That was probably my biggest motivator. Like I knew a lot of basically complex medication and what they meant, organic chemistry structures from like the age of 5 or 6 years old, simply because my grandma was a very sick person. She had congestive heart disease. Um, she had two strokes, a heart attack, like across her whole life. So
Wow.
she was on like over like if you saw like the little pill capsule things that you
Right,
got
with the days of the
the
week.
Sunday through
Yeah.
Saturday, yeah, it was like always filled with like all these different medication, all these
Yeah.
different pills. So it's a very like starstruck when you're like 4 or 5 years old and learning these like learning what coumadin is like a blood thinner, or like learning what what like some different like painkillers are like the ones that are prescribed to you. So not like the Tylenols and the Advils you buy from CVS,
Yeah.
but more so like the Motrins and stuff that's like being prescribed from the hospital, right? So it's very starstruck when like you're learning all this all at once. And I would say that was probably my biggest motivator when I really wanted to become pre med, and like I wanted to study bio and really learn. Um, and then now I'm discovering there's other avenues as well. So been working a little bit in finance, but um, I would say that's like the main motivator in life is when you see everything and that what one's willing to sacrifice. Like my mom, she sacrificed a lot of time just dedicated to taking care of her mom in the house, and that's something that we could all look to and say that like
100%.
that you know without hesitation, a lot of us would do that. I'd say 99% of the people in the world probably do that, right?
Yeah.
For their parents or their loved ones or whoever they grew up with, right? Um, and so I was with my grandma. until the very last night. So it's like February, midwinter break. Her she would always have like her lungs get filled with fluid from the medications she was taking,
Okay.
and then she told my mom that she wanted to go to the hospital. She didn't feel well, and my mom had been through this sort of thing. But my mom told me that later on in life, that like she knew that was like that was the
That
end.
was the one.
Like that was gonna be the last time she was gonna see that apartment alive.
Yeah.
So, it was apparent to her when my grandma was leaving the apartment because it's like a little like it's like an L-shaped apartment. So when you walk in, it's a long hallway, take a left, and then there's like the two bedrooms, and then there's my grandma's bedroom that's in the back, right?
Yeah.
And she's like like looking all around like this,
I see.
and it's like basically saying goodbye
Right.
because she didn't really talk that much towards the end,
Okay.
but she spoke a little bit. And so as she's leaving the apartment, she's like looking all over the place, and she sees like and
Kind of giving give like
yeah,
last memory.
exactly. And
Yeah.
then so I was there. I go to the hospital. They load her up. The EMTs load her up into the ambulance, and we lived right across the street, right on in the Upper East Side, so right across the street from Cornell Med. So it was just like literally go around the corner, but they had to transport her in the wheelchair.
Hmm.
So we're in the ambulance to take her to the hospital, and she was there for about 2.5 weeks, and that was the major decision. So my mom was her proxy, and my
Yeah.
mom had to make a big decision, right? It's like we can either continue to give her all these meds and basically try to keep her alive,
Yeah.
but like uncomfortable. Well,
Yeah.
she was connected all these tubes. Her skin was starting to be discolored from all the times the needles were plugging into her veins,
I see.
and it's very distraught. Like it's very
It's a
like,
bad. It's like a.
oh, absolutely, it's horrible when you see someone like that. You could just tell from the face of her look. She was like she wanted to leave already.
Yeah.
She told my mom like she would just start agonizing, saying like when am I gonna go? When am I gonna go? Like in Spanish, like
Mm.
cuando me voy, because it comes a certain point where you experience so much pain, you just want to go in peace.
Yeah.
So that's when my mom had to make that difficult decision where they said they were going to connect like a feeding tube to her because she was no longer eating. My mom was like, no, this is too much.
Yeah.
And it's a tough decision. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's never
I mean,
easy to accept the end of, a parent's life like that.
of course,
But
especially when it's your own daughter that has to
oh,
make the choice.
man,
So
I know that
it's
that was a tough decision because
yeah.
my mom's a physician. She did family medicine in DR for many years, and basically like she knows like when it's like the ending is coming, right?
Yeah.
So they threw her in the nursing home. So we lived right next to the nursing home, Mary Manning Walsh, and they have a hospice on the last floor that was belongs to Calvary Hospital in the Bronx. And so it's right across from Cornell Ahmed, and they threw her in there, and the doctors told my mom they were like, "We're gonna take off all her meds. She's gonna have about 3 days to live. By Monday, she should be gone." And my mom was like, "Okay." She's like trying to prepare herself, but you can never prepare for this type
Of
of news,
course
right?
not. No. How
And
do you prepare for
no,
that?
you can't. And Monday comes around. Last time I saw my grandma alive was Sunday, Sunday the 4th of 2018. It's, March 4th. Go and give her a kiss and we hug her. And I posted a lot about it on my social media because it was just like, 14 years old, it's so hard to comprehend a loss like that, right?
Yeah.
And I remember the very last thing I saw my grandma, as part of my dad's side, came to visit her that as well that night, was I love you, and I know, and I asked her what do you wish for me? What are your wishes?
Hmm.
And she told me that she wished for me to graduate high school, go to college, and to get a career, and to promise that I would take care of my parents and treat them well and respect them. And I always told her that I would never break that promise. And so that's why when I graduated from high school, I dedicated that diploma to her because I was like, that was a beacon of hope.
Yeah.
She would have she worked in as a principal. She worked as a teacher back in DR, so she was always really big on education. So the last diploma she ever saw me with was when I graduated from middle school, my eighth grade diploma. And there's a little photo of me. She's in her bed, and I have like my little diploma, like hold it up. Uh,
That's dope.
yes, and so yeah, she passed on 6 a.m. on the 5th of March, 2018. It's a Monday morning. I'm getting ready to go to school. A freshman in high school at the time, and I woke up at the exact time she passed.
Mm.
So that's why I'm like I'm really religious. I'm Roman Catholic. I was always raised religiously, and that's where I guess like I was like, wow, this is like when I later found out that that was the time she passed. I was like, that was her saying goodbye,
Yeah.
waking me up at
Right.
that time, 6:15 a.m.
Hmm.
and I never wake up at 6:15. School starts, I think it was like 8:40 a.m. So
Yeah.
I would wake up around like, because I live 5 blocks away, so I'd wake up around 7:45 to go to school.
Right.
I'd be out the
And then
bill.
like
I'd be
on
out
the
the house
one
at
off chance.
I'd be out the house at like 8:30 in the morning, and I'm like 6:15. Why am I up? And I did things I would never do that morning. Like I kid you not, I have to play PlayStation like
Yeah.
just to kill time. I mean,
Yeah.
I was on my phone for a little bit, and I just remember like seeing my parents. I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what. Their
Hmm.
faces were so serious.
Yeah.
Because my aunt was the one who stayed the night and saw her pass. Basically, the nurses went in and they went like, she's gone.
Hmm.
Because they have it connected to like the lines, and they
Yeah.
can the
Yeah.
vitals, and when the vitals are like, that's it, right?
Yeah. Beep,
Yeah,
beep, beep.
exactly.
Yeah.
But my aunt thought they were coming to clean the room, but that wasn't the case. They
Mm.
were there to basically tell them that unfortunately your loved one has passed, and this is what happened. So uh, I didn't find out. I went through the whole day. It was a lovely day.
Mm.
I had a great day at school. I still remember conversations I had that day with a few of my friends. And it was a good day until I got out of school. Bell rings. I remember last period. I'm in biology. So that's another reason. So that's a little
Mm.
precursor to home, basically, to like
Yeah.
why I'm also a bio major. Coming out of bio, I told my mom I'm gonna go to a nursing home to go see my grandma, because I had known that she wasn't eating, so I wanted to go and talk to the doctors and tell them like, all right, let's see if she's eating today. Mom was like, no, 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 come home. I was like, no, mom, I'm gonna go to the nursing home. I want to see my grandma.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
she's like, no, no, come home first. And I was like, okay. I'm not thinking of anything, right? I mean, what could possibly be going? I mean, like, I never knew that they had told her that she had 3 days to live. So in
Mm.
my mind,
You
14
think,
years old, I'm thinking like,
yeah, so you chilling, you
I'm
know?
thinking my mom wants to tell me something, drop off my bag, give me a little snack before I go to nursing home, right? Do my homework maybe, right?
Yeah.
No, it's I get home and it's not. My mom doesn't even have the ability to tell me that her mom had passed. That's how distraught she was as well. It's my dad who sits me down in the chair, pats me right on the shoulder, and sits me down, and he's just like, Jesse, we lost her this morning. And that to me, that was the hardest point of my life up until that point. I completely lost it. I cried for maybe about 2.5, 3 hours straight,
Yeah.
just nonstop crying, because I couldn't believe it. I was in the denial phase of grief. We in
Yeah.
grief we have different stages, right?
Yeah. And you were at the
You're
first stage.
I was in denial for a few days, right? And then I was in like, why did this happen? Like you go through the cycle, like, why did this happen? Like, is there more that could have been done? Is it my fault? Like, what could I have done? Right? You go through those phases.
Yeah.
And I also I told my mom like I wanted to be there when they were gonna take the corpse away to the nursing to the funeral home, and my mom was like, "That's not what your grandma wanted. Your grandma wanted you to remember her happy and like alive." And I think I would have probably been like I would have probably had almost maybe PTSD or something, like if I had seen my grandma like that.
Really?
I mean, you see someone like alive, like the one when I saw my grandma again, because we cremated her because that was her desires, and then we
Okay.
brought her to DR to be with her mom. So we
Okay.
did a little memorial a few months later. That like I see a little box. Like I don't see you don't even see the ashes. The ashes are in a box, so you don't even see that.
Yeah.
So you go from seeing her alive to seeing a box that's supposed to
That's it.
symbolize and be her remains, right?
Yeah.
That is a lot. I don't want to say it's easier, but it's like it's basically it's better than seeing the corpse for sure, because I in my mind it's almost impossible to like look.
Yeah. You don't have that face to see.
Oh yeah, I mean
So.
like imagine being with someone for 14 years straight. This is who you grew up with, and they're basically like your mom, right? And then they go on, and then you see their lifeless body, like that's like traumatizing, right? So I at the time I was upset, but then I later accepted, like, no, my mom's right. Like she didn't want me to see her that way. So that to me was like a lot. Um, and yeah, I would say to this day I still think about her every now and then. Still pray uh, to because obviously I told you I'm religious, so I believe in God. So
Mhm.
I pray to God every night, and I always think about her. Um, and now marks 6 years since she passed, but I still remember every single minute of that day vividly. It's like engraved
Yeah.
in
It's
my
one of
memory.
those like, where were you?
It's one of those like
Where were you
I
at
could
this
tell
time?
you what I was wearing, where I was, and what I was doing from 6:15 a.m. to 11:57 p.m. because that was the exact time I went to bed. Like I could tell you that off the bat. And I still remember that from vividly.
Yeah.
Like after she passed, so my dad took me to our local church and to the priest that we speak to, and I now because I was an altar boy also growing up,
Mm,
the
okay.
altar boy, yeah.
Yeah.
And I went to talk to the father, and he had his mom, his aunt, and his sister's ashes all in like a shelf, and I'm like, wow. And he's like, I understand what you're going through. So it was nice to be able to be in a position where I can see someone had experienced what I had gone through,
Yeah.
but experiencing three losses like that,
Yeah.
it's a lot. But then again, obviously I'm a child. I'm 14
Mm,
versus he's like I don't know how old he is, like 50 plus or whatever, right?
yeah.
And he's like middle aged, and that's a lot. So I would say that was to me was my biggest moment in life. But yeah, I grew up in that area my whole life. Um, Dad and mom would take me to park. Basketball and baseball were always big in my life. Went to the summer camps. Remember a few. Harlem RBI was one of them. I used to be in that when I was a kid. And I was always active, and I was always doing something new. So
Okay.
that's what I can remember.
So, what are certain things that you do right now? I mean, again, outside of the fact that you're again in college, you graduated,
Hmm.
you were able to um, do that for your grandmother, and I assume you're still doing that now for her,
Yeah,
right? But tell me a little bit more of those activities. Okay, so you did baseball
yeah.
and everything, and well, what are your interests right now?
So one of the main things I do is that so outside of the classwork that we have, right? I'm in a few different clubs here on campus. So
Yeah.
I'm a legislative aide to our U.S. Senate, to our not U.S. to our to our Columbia University Senate, and I'd say like that's from high school as well. I used to be very active in student gov, senior class president and leader PR when I was in junior year, and that's kind of like transferred over. I'm also a pipeline chair on our Charles Drew Pre Medical Society. It's a pre med society meant for minorities here at Columbia. Uh, Kind of like explaining how to go to med school and whatnot. And I'm also part of Black Gen Capital. It's like a investment. It's like a minority investment firm, investment club, which I learned a lot of like the tools that I use to kind of get the internship I have now from there. And I volunteer at Mount Sinai. I'm like work with patients in the emergency room, helping them out, like whether it's like getting them water, getting them a blanket, that sort of thing. And I just love to travel, so I love to spend time with my family. Love driving, going, hanging out with my friends. Uh,
Typical,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
kid in his
And
20s in college,
and I would say like
yeah,
having so we've had our place in Monroe since 2012,
yeah,
and so like having that ability to kind of go up every weekend, it's been amazing because like you get to experience the outdoors. I love the outdoors, and I love going and seeing like our mother nature and that sort of thing. But honestly, I think that the main things I honestly do right now, it's whether if I'm not working out, I'm not playing basketball or baseball, it's what I do on a daily basis, which is always trying to find what's the next best thing for me
yeah,
to grow.
right.
I love learning. So whether it's attaining new skills, I remember I was just in Italy a few weeks ago,
How was
and
that?
that was an amazing trip. First time in Europe, first time experiencing on my Italian side. So I'm also a little bit Italian. I have an aunt and two cousins that live over there.
What part of Italy?
So they live in the East Coast on a town called Pescara, but but they moved to like the suburbs of it. So it's a little town called Bene. It's a really small population. It's in the mountains too. The mountains over
Okay.
there are huge, like 10,000 plus feet. Like
Jeez,
yeah,
Jesus Christ.
yeah, it's huge. But yeah. So but it's like hopping on Duolingo and
Mm.
learning a little bit of Italian. I remember I was practicing a little bit of time before I went, or that's working on the computer and applying to jobs or applying to internships, right? It's always like, what's the next best thing in life? I think that's what keeps me moving forward and utilize the gym as like an outlet to not just grow, physically, but
Right.
also like mentally, right?
Mentally
I'm
and
sure,
building your confidence and
yeah.
everything like that.
I mean, I
So
see your stories too, man. You're always at the gym, like working
we
out.
gotta make these gains, we gotta
Yeah,
make these gains.
absolutely.
So okay, that's cool. That's cool. That's cool.
But enough about me. I mean, let's tell me a little bit about yourself and like your like origin story.
My origin story. Well,
Yeah.
my origin story. Once upon a time, Well, I mean, like I said, I was born and raised in the city, Washington Heights. So I think kind of a contrast to you, where you were felt like you were like the only Hispanic in a
Mm-hmm.
neighborhood of not that. I
Yeah.
was I was in the heart of, I like to call it Dominican Disneyland.
Yeah, little Dominican
If you know
Republic.
anything about, yeah, if you know anything about Washington Heights,
The food.
if you need a Dominican, you'll find it literally
E-
every second.
Every
So
literally every you'll probably find 3 Dominicans for every corner on that
e-
in that
exactly.
area.
So yeah, so I was there for the majority of my childhood up until about 10, when we had moved out to the Bronx, where I'm still currently in now, the South Bronx. And I remember when I first had moved out there, I was super against it, tremendously. And it was mostly for the fact that I only had lived in one place at that entire point. All my friends were there. My elementary and my middle school were all out in the Heights and in Dykeman when I went out over there to go to school. So then moving out to the Bronx, which I was in the sixth grade at that point, or just starting sixth grade. I did not like it. I hated it. Did not want to be out there, and not even for the reason to be the dirty Bronx. I didn't know any of that crap up until that point. But I just know I just didn't want to move. I didn't care if we moved even across the street. I just didn't want to do it.
That's kind of how I felt recently.
So
Like
yeah,
leaving the
and
same area you've been your whole life, it's always tough.
exactly. So yeah, and I at the beginning obviously was not what I wanted, but as years have gone on, I've learned to find the good parts about it and realizing the benefits that I got from, well, yeah, that I got from for us as a family moving out over there, and the opportunities and things I was able to do due to that fact. So it, in hindsight, obviously everything's better in hindsight, as they say. And overall, it was probably one of the better decisions long term. So yeah, but fast forward till now, like I said, I've already graduated college, have my bachelor's, currently work in my dad's family business, which is a driving school, and that's kind of my daily 9 to 5. But outside of that, I do my photography, and photography's kind of been like my has been my passion, the
Kind
thing
of
that I
like
try to work
basketball's
on,
your career,
everything like
yeah.
that. So so just trying to get better in that in general. So, and funny enough, with that kind of came out of, it's one of those things where it's like, you weren't looking for it, it found
Yeah,
you, right? And to give you that backstory, was kind of like my aunt who was getting married.
here
My
or
family and I know
in
she was
DR.
getting married in North Carolina. She lives out
Okay,
there. My mother's sister, and she was gonna get married. She didn't have a photographer or anything, and I remember my dad. He wasn't gonna be attending. Just gonna be my mom and my sisters and I were gonna go when it came to the immediate family. But besides that, he had a camera, and I remember just telling him, "Hey, can I take the camera just to be the photographer for fun?" Because I knew better to have something than nothing.
absolutely.
So, and I think at that point, I never really, like. I remember I picked up the camera maybe once or twice just for fun, but this is like the first time I kind of like used it for a genuine purpose. And I'm not knowing much, just knowing how to just press and shoot essentially.
Yeah,
So, but I remember after it was all said and done, and we went over there, and I was basically the impromptu photographer for that night. I remember the following day looking through all the photos and seeing all the moments that I was able to capture, and I still have those photos still to this day, and just seeing what I was able to accomplish with not knowing anything.
yeah.
And I remember telling myself like, "Yo, this is pretty fun. It's pretty cool.
We all
I'd like
start
to do more
somewhere.
of that." Yeah, of course you always somewhere. And after realizing that, it was more like, "Yeah, this is pretty dope. Maybe I should try more of this." And then from there, I started taking my camera out onto in to school. At this point, I'm in high school now, and I just started taking pictures of my friends. At this point, I was a junior. Yeah, I was a no, no, excuse me, I was a senior. Yeah, I was a senior in high school, and I just started taking my camera around more often after class or after school. I would go around and just take pictures of my friends while we would hang out, and it was pretty dope. It was pretty fun. And I remember I took so many pictures, and then I have an Instagram and I started posting those pictures there. I remember I would take so many pictures of these moments that I was capturing with my friends, and I wanted to upload so many, and I was like, I can't upload.
Yeah.
And Instagram can only just put 10
Yeah.
posts, and still to this day, but whatever. Point being was I was taking so many photos, and I didn't want to just put all these photos in this one main page that I have. So I ended up making a new account strictly for my photography, and then that's kind of where we are now, where I got the ball rolling and started just learning how to edit photos and learning how to compose a photo, trying to make it look as best as I can, learning about aperture and shutter speed and exposure and all these fancy words that you learn as you get into a new skill.
That's amazing. I think that honestly, it's always about learning new things, right? It kind of almost reminds me of when I recently just became a runner. So I downloaded a Strava, like the running app,
Yeah,
and it was like last summer. I never ran before. First time running, ran 4 miles, a trail in Heritage Trail up in Monroe, New York. And the next day, I'm like, I'm around 5, then 6, and 7, and then it basically motivated me to kind of like make this a thing where like whenever you're like really feeling stressed or whatever, you just go out on a run.
yeah,
Craziest runs I started doing was like I started doing 10+ mile runs. First time I ran 10 miles was from the Upper East Side all the way down to Soho and back,
yeah.
and I was like all incline on Third Ave here in Manhattan,
That's tough.
and
I
then
can't even go up 190 to
that was 10 miles, man. And
from like Dykeman to like 178th Street,
but
and that'd be heavy up in those
it
hills.
gets better. There's one time where like you're on Instagram Reels, you're watching like David Goggins Reels or like just like any like motivation Reels, and you're like you
Yeah,
feel super motivated. You're like, all right, I'm gonna go do this,
yeah, it
and
pumps you up.
but then like you actually go do it. It's like crazy. I'm running on from here. I went to the World Trade Center and back at 1 in the morning,
Okay.
and I was here at Columbia, and I was like, I was gassed. I mean, you can even ask my roommate. He sees me coming. It's like 2, 3 a.m. I think it was like yeah, it's almost 4 in the morning. It was like 3:30, and I was just gassed. I was like, bro, I really just ran like over 10 miles,
Yeah,
like and being like the only one doing it. But everything's all mental at the end of the day. It's like how you're able to like really focus, and like with
yeah.
like your photography, it's like the same thing. You just really focus on your skills.
Yeah, no, in general, overall, with everything that you do, it's just a matter of how much you're willing to
Oh,
put in the
absolutely.
work and the consistency, and then and the discipline. And once you have those things in mind, it becomes a habit. And once it's a habit, it's, as they say, it's hard to get rid of it. So with my photography, it kind of like the building block for who I am today, and understand that if there's anything that you want to accomplish, you need to put yourself out there, and you need to force yourself to break out of your box, and be willing to accept harder and newer challenges for yourself, because at the end of the day, if you want to be better, you need to get outside of your comfort zone.
Oh, absolutely.
So
You will not find peace or you will not find a challenge when you're too comfortable. Uh, when you go on a run, right? And it's like 72 degrees outside, nice and sunny, and it's like all flat land.
yeah,
That's too easy, right?
right, right,
Try running at 1 a.m. With like it's like 32 degrees outside in New York City winter, right? With shorts and a t-shirt on, and you don't see a single person on the road, and you see a ton of incline, right? Like that, like it's moments with like that where it causes your mind to really expand,
yeah.
and it causes you to
It puts
I
things in
call
a
it
different
mental
perspective.
toughness.
Yeah, yeah. It puts things in a different
Oh,
perspective,
right, absolutely.
and shows what
What you're
again what you're
capable of.
capable of. Exactly. So
I think we got to tell the viewers,
yeah.
Rafi, but how we really met. So
Oh, okay.
wait, we
How we met.
you were
So basically, to start,
go ahead.
I'll start. So I used to work at Gap, right? Well, we both worked at Gap,
The Gap,
right? Gap, the
85th
retail
Street and Third
store.
Ave.
Yes, on 85th Street, out on the east side. Yeah. At this point, I had been working there for about a year, and I
Au-
remember,
August 2019. That was my first. August 5th, 2019 was my first day.
yeah, yeah, I started in August as well, towards like the last week. I don't remember the date exactly.
But you were there before.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, about a year prior, I was in there, and I remember I was just doing my regular hours, and I remember I was just with a coworker of ours. I won't say his name for sake, but I remember him and I were just chatting it up, and then remember some kid came into the store with his mom just to like shop, and we remember him and
Good
my
old
coworker.
days.
We were chatting up with this kid because he was just at the time we just thought he was very goofy, right? And I'll be straight. And I've told him very
I was
bluntly.
like 16.
Uh,
I was, yeah,
yeah, you were 16. I
15,
remember
16.
you were definitely 16. Yeah,
Yeah, 16,
yeah.
2019.
And I remember we was like, "Oh, this kid's so funny," but I remember after you had left, we were just like, he's funny, whatever, but we'll never see him again. And then fast forward, maybe like 2 days later or a week or so.
I, that was like in, no, that was like in June because then I got hired, remember, but like the background check thing was like system was down. So I didn't show up for like another month.
Oh, I don't
Yeah.
remember that, but okay.
I
So
probably came in like a few days later again to like inquire. So that's when so
so
you're probably
maybe
referring.
something like that. But I
Yeah.
remember the time from when we first encountered him at the
Yeah.
store. So when he said that he was gonna work with us, I'll never forget. He came up to me.
Yeah, it was like a few days later.
Yeah, he came up to me and he was like, "Oh, I got a job. My mom convinced the GM or whatever." And I remember
To,
like for
to,
real, and I remember like I was like shocked, but also just like like it was kind of like it was like surprise, but out of
in a good way.
no, in a bad way. It was definitely in a bad way because I remember I went up to my coworker and I was like, "Yo, bro, this kid he's getting hired," and
Realize I can't believe
and
it.
we were shook. And but like, I mean, again, we didn't hate you, but like, we just remember just how you acted and everything like that, and
It's like the first time.
how very energetic and jumpy you were.
So for context, right? I guess I'll tell this to the viewers. So New York State, in New York City, we have very strict child labor laws, right? So one of the main reasons the GM at the time was hesitant about hiring was because there weren't any minors in the store at the time, if I remember correctly. I remember because
No, I was actually the youngest at that point.
it was like,
I was basically the youngest worker
yeah,
in the
and you
store.
were like what, like
At
19,
that best, when I started,
like 19.
when I started I was 17, and like in a few months I would have been 18. So at that point I was like fully probably almost 19 at that point.
Yeah, so that was the thing. So they didn't really want to deal with like the supervision of the child labor laws, but I just remember like the way it kind of happened was like my mom was in there and like talking to the GM for a bit, and he was like, "Oh, I'll give it a shot. I mean, it's like a one-off thing, right?" So, and it was because I also had experience. So I had been working for over 2 years at the McDonald's up in Monroe, and that's when came over. And I was still at Monroe for a few shifts, but then I remember I quit Monroe like about a year later, November 2020. So the McDonald's there, and I was just the cashier. We had really a lot
Yeah.
of great memories working at that store, a lot of great people we met. But yeah, and then let's go back to like also your driving school. I mean, I remember when you referred me to your driving school and I got my
Oh,
license when I was
oh
17.
yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I
I
forgot.
got
Oh yeah, so like I said, I'm on driving school. Well,
quick advertisement for the driving
yes.
school.
If you need a if you need a driving school to go to Elegant Driving School. It's up in the Bronx. Okay, search it up on Google. You'll find the
If you
five
want your
stars.
license, this is the guy to go to right here. As
Yeah,
for Rafael,
yeah. Elegant Driving School. We got like 4.8 stars. So there you go. But yeah, so this kid needed his license, and I had told everybody that I worked or my in our store that
our
I have a
coworkers,
driving
yeah.
school, and he was one of the first people to pull up from my job to go to my family business and inevitably get his license. So I mean, you can tell him. I mean, how many lessons you took and everything like that.
So
What's
like
your
so
experience?
I had already so my dad had taught me how to drive like when I was like younger, like like in those back
Mhm.
parking
Yeah,
lots and like the Target when you're
yeah,
14
yeah,
years
yeah.
old, right?
But specifically,
But
like
like
during the
but like so I got like the pack so like the one package, the one was like you get like one lesson and it's like to do the road test.
yeah,
It's basically just to make sure like I kind of knew what I was doing.
right.
I forgot the name of the instructor, but like it was pretty cool. Like helped me like with the parallel parking. So
Good.
that was like one of the and those are the main things to like really knock down. Don't do a lot of that in upstate New York. I'll tell you that. It's like all parking lots and
Yeah,
just park
yeah,
on the side of the road, but it's an important skill to know for sure, especially
yeah.
when you come down here to the city.
OD, and I'm a big believer that anybody that doesn't know how to drive in the city doesn't know how to
No, I
drive.
mean
I think
New York
this is
City driving will build you. Like
oh yeah, yeah.
it'll definitely build.
I mean, honestly, like anything outside the city, you get 5 lanes. Each lane is like just super wide, and everybody's going like 70
like
miles an hour.
well, like, you get like 3 lanes, like in like
But even sure,
the Garden State Parkway is like 2 lanes. Palisades it's like
sure,
and that's Jersey.
even the lesser lanes, but still they're much
They're
wider,
still
and you
wider.
can drive super fast, and most cars are
FDR Drive, the narrowest 3 lanes you'll ever
and the
find.
majority of those
Curves all
highways,
over, potholes. Don't even get me started with the potholes here in New York.
right.
But
So
yeah, but I remember, yeah. So like, had the lesson, went really well. Then took the road test and I passed it first time through.
yeah,
So
yeah, you did pass that on your first try.
um, shout out to Rafael for that because definitely helped me out. So I got my, so I was 17 at the time, so it's still a license, but it's like your junior license.
Yeah.
Um, and they give you like the DMV gives you a little what was it, like that paper temporary
Yeah,
one?
temporary
Yeah,
permit
yeah.
that
So you
they give you.
get the little temporary one, and it's funny because the reason why I got my license because when I was 17 is when I got my car.
Mm-hmm.
So for my birthday, my dad bought me a 2020 Honda Civic Hatchback Sport. Still have it right here. Still drive it to this day.
Oh yeah,
And
nice bougie out here.
yeah, little few mods on it. Even I remember when I was in high school, I made a whole car page too. So
Mm.
if you guys are interested, turbo.20 Civic. That's my car page. Um, but yeah, I would say that was a great experience just being able to kind of learn and also getting my license. And then when you're 18, it rolls over and it just turns into your regular license.
Mm-hmm.
And then I recently had to go through like the whole hurdle with the DNB now when you get your 21 license. So,
What hurdle?
well, like because you request when you're 21, but the problem is I changed my address.
Oh, okay.
So I had to so I had to request a new ID, but I requested too early, so they sent me the vertical one, and then like 2 weeks later, I got like the regular one in the mail.
I see.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I remember. I
but
mean, I didn't change any address, so they just went
yeah, they just
before
sent
I
it to
even
you.
turned 21.
They
I
just
already
send it
had
to
it.
you.
Yeah, and if they did, I know I got like dumb quick from when I turned 21.
Yeah, man.
Like I didn't even know that they were gonna. I didn't know that they would send me one to begin with.
DMV is just a headache. I mean, at least in the city. I mean, I've been to the one in Goshen and Chester, New York. I think it's one of those two places, and you're just in and out. Like you're there for maybe about 30 minutes to an hour at most. Or
Yeah,
you go here, like in the city, it's like packed on like a Tuesday, and they're like, we close at 4 p.m. and then, oh
it's
man,
depressing.
yeah,
It's depressing. Yeah,
it is.
it is depressing.
But yeah, I would say for yourself, if what's like one piece of advice that you could give to your 21-year-old self, since I'm 21, or like to our viewers that are also around the same age, 18 to 21, whichever one choose.
Well, if I had to give advice, just for context sake, I'm 23 right now, and for those of you that are in your 18s into your 21s, for starters, definitely just for starters enjoy the now, right? I think while it sounds cheesy and it's obvious, it's definitely one of those things that you definitely got to really appreciate because life goes at you quick. I was 21 once upon a time, so it's definitely something that you want to enjoy of. So because it goes by quick. You're 21 first, and then boom, next thing you know, you're in your mid 20s and you're feeling like what to do. So while you're there, while you definitely should enjoy the moment and take advantage of all the opportunities, and but more specifically with those opportunities, don't be afraid to take the chance because this is that time where you don't have a lot of things on top of you when it comes to responsibilities, whether you have to pay a phone bill or maybe some people have to pay rent of some sort, right? You don't have as many things as you will have when you're in your 30s or 40s or 50s. So again, I'm not at that age yet, but I know enough now that that thing will come eventually. So while you're here in this time, take advantage of learning how can you better yourself 5 years from now and try to have some sort of game plan so that you yourself can, you know, be in a stable position when you inevitably, you know, finally fly the coop if you haven't just yet.
Great,
So
great words of wisdom right there.
yeah,
I think I look back to this quote. I remember back from high school. So shout out Mr. Anderson from the Eleanor Roosevelt Music Department. If he's watching this, he'll remember this quote. He had a big quote right on the entrance of the doorway because I go to guitar class back in high school, and it would say, "Fail, fail again, fail better." And at the time, you're like, you don't really understand what that means, but I kind of like took it to heart, where it's like you don't want to necessarily take what what you're going through, or if you're going through like some down moments, or you don't get the job you want, you don't get the promotion you want, you don't get the grade you want on an exam, right? That's not who you are, and it doesn't identify you, what your character is, and like who you are. If it takes 10,000, 10 times, 100 times, 10,000 times to get it done, but it still gets done. That's what
Yeah.
matters at the end of the day. And nothing in life has its own journey. We all go through different journeys in life. I mean, I still remember when I applied to this university. Um, like it wasn't necessarily a straight road journey. Like I didn't know where I was going until April of 2021 versus like back in like September, October, or like December, let's say. All my friends that are like they get their early acceptances, they're going to these top 20 schools in the country. Meanwhile, I have like um, only one acceptance. I remember I got into Penn State University the first time around. I'm like, so am I just going to go here? Do I not have any options? Like, it's so much uncertainty. So
Yeah.
my biggest piece of advice to all our viewers and to people in life is just don't let the uncertainty cloud your circumstances and cloud who you are. Just always keep at it, keep going at it. And if it means you have to restart or just take another route, it's all right,
Yeah.
because that's the whole point. Um,
That's life. That's life at the end of the day.
exactly.
So.
I didn't become a runner overnight.
Mm.
I mean, the first time I ran, sure, I ran 4 miles, but like, there's people that run 10, 15, 20 miles every day, right? And you slowly start building that up over time.
Only.
And I say now, even like with this internship I got, it's the same thing. Like I went through hours of just recruitment and apply applications, and a lot of people go through the same thing, whether it's a job, college, med school, grad school, wherever you go. So I think that's really what's the main takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about making progress
There we go.
and
It's all that matters.
figuring out, if you don't try, you'll never know. So that's what you're here for. That's what we are here for. You got to keep on trying. So yeah, but I think that is all the time we have,
Yeah.
right? So overall, like I said, we're gonna be here spreading peace and positivity, and hopefully we can bring more people out here to join us and have them share their stories. Okay, so any goodbyes you want to say?
Yeah. So stay tuned. We're gonna have an Instagram, TikTok, YouTube channel coming
Eventually,
soon.
yes,
Yeah,
in due time,
in
bro.
due time.
In due time, but we'll get
Um,
that sorted out
it's the
for you.
Defying All Odds podcast, and
So
stay tuned for weekly announcements. We'll announce like who our guests are and that sort of thing. But other than that, this is Jesse signing off.
your boy Rafa, yeah,
Signing off.
and as always, define all the odds. This is
Thanks for joining us.